Kamala Harris attacked Donald Trump for honoring fallen heroes who died in the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle, and the back and forth on that was truly stunning. Also, she's got an economic proposal. Price caps, but what does that actually mean and how would it affect our lives? We've got all of this election-related, politics-related news on today's episode of Relatable, as well as much more. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com, use code Allie at checkout, goodranchers.com, code Allie. Hey guys, welcome to Relatable. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone is having a wonderful week so far. Hope you had a great Labor Day. I am so ready for the fall. This is the time every year where I'm like, yes, cooler weather, warmer clothes. And then I remember that I live where I live. And so it is the time, it is the season for what I like to call the fall costume. And that is where we decide here in the South that we are going to dress up for fall, even though our weather does not necessitate it. We will go outside, it's 90 degrees, and we will wear the cowl neck. We will wear the scarf. We will wear the boots. We will wear the jeans. I'm kind of already donning a fall costume. You see, this is like a sweater, even though it's short sleeved. I am already donning my fall costume because I refuse to continue to dress like it's summer because I'm so ready for the season change, knowing that I will not see 70 degrees until probably Christmas time. So happy fall costume season to all of you who celebrate. All right, it's also the beginning of September, which means it is Share the Arrows month. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. September 28th. I am so excited, y'all. Okay. Let me tell you, I gotta do all this. Yep, you can see the graphic up there if you're watching on YouTube. I gotta tell you a couple things about Share the Arrows. So if you're new here, you don't know that Rosaria Butterfield, amazing apologist, author, theologian, just incredible. Elisa Childers, another amazing apologist. Abby Halberstadt, amazing author, mom of 10, homeschooler, Grammy Award-winning artist, Francesca Battistelli. We're all going to be there. Plano, Texas, Prestonwood Baptist Church. Go to sharethearrows.com. It's September 28th. And okay, I have some housekeeping things to say. Number one, we've got an amazing speaker, huge speaker. A lot of you guys have guessed her. A lot of you guys have not, though. And I haven't announced yet. I can't announce yet, but I think I'm going to announce this week. It's a really big deal. I can't believe that she agreed to be there with us at Share the Arrows. So that's going to be announced this week. Use that to send it to your friends and say, you've got to come with me. Send it to your sister, your cousin, any Christian woman in your life. Tell her to come and to hear all of these amazing speakers. It's going to be so good. So that's one. Look out for that. I will be announcing that very soon, probably in the next few days. And then also there's just this kind of logistical thing. So we had no idea how many tickets we were going to sell. I had a number in my head, but we are well past double what I thought that we actually met that goal in the first 48 hours. And now we are double what I thought that we would ultimately sell. And we're going to keep going because this venue, this church is really big. So we've got some space, but I'm letting you know that we have sold out all of the floor and the mezzanine seats. So if you go to sharethearrows.com right now, you'll see that it says general admission is already sold out and that only balcony options are available. And I just want you to know, though, that when you buy that balcony ticket, you are not buying a seat that's going to be in the nosebleeds. You're not going to be able to see. It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be like that at all. In this church in Prestonwood, there is not a bad seat in the house. Every single seat you're going to be able to see. It's going to be an amazing experience to be able to worship with these women. Actually, I would say in the balcony, it's going to be even cooler. When you've got Francesca Battistelli up on stage leading the worship for thousands and thousands of women, and we are all singing in unison to Jesus, when you're up on the balcony, you're going to be able to see all of that. And man, I kind of want to sit at the balcony. I might actually, if I have time to sneak up there during worship, I'm probably going to stand on the balcony just so I can take it all in. So balcony seating is available, and it's just important for logistics and because there's not assigned seats or for how everyone is going to be able to file in and sit down, that we at least have some separation there. So just FYI, when you go to sharethearrows.com, you will see that. If you haven't signed up, come on, make it happen. Whether you are local to the Dallas area or whether you are flying in, driving in, we've got people coming from all over. You can come by yourself. You will make lifelong friends. Also, you can come with friends and family. I'll do like a Q&A FAQ segment either on the show or on Instagram or something, because a lot of you just have different questions, which is understandable, and I will do my best to answer all of them. We've also got exclusive Carly Jean Los Angeles merchandise that is really, really cute, like so cute, that's going to be sold there. And for those of you who bought your tickets early, you were able to access that merchandise already. And so you'll be able to rock it at the event. Guys, I'm so excited. I've been meeting with all of the speakers. I've been talking with Francesca about the different songs. We put so much into this, and it is all for you guys. It's all for the Lord, obviously, first and foremost. And I just pray that it brings him glory and that it solidifies the Christian women that are there, that it helps stabilize us and reminds us of what is good, right, and true, and that we are not alone, and that because of Christ, we are on the right side. You are going to feel so empowered and equipped after this. So go to sharethearrows.com. Also, if you love this podcast, please leave us a review. A 5-star review would be so appreciated on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It would mean so much. All right. We've got a lot to get into today. I'm going to try to speed through it as much as I can while still being thorough, because we are in an election season. The rest of this year is just going to be crazy. There's going to be good, bad, and ugly. And I'm going to do my best to break it down and to remind us that politics matter because policy matters because people matter, without ever pushing us into a state of anxiety or panic thinking, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end, because actually that day has already been ordained by the God who controls all of it. But while we are in this physical, temporal context, while we are citizens of America, we do have to care about what is going on. So we're going to do our best here on Relatable to balance all of that. Before we talk about the first bit of that dynamic that I just explained, let me go ahead and pause. I'll tell you about our first sponsor for the day, and it's Carly Jean Los Angeles. I just told you they're going to be in Dallas. They're going to be at the Share the Arrows event. There's going to be a whole booth there for you to buy the merchandise. I think they're doing a Dallas meetup actually a couple days before the event too. So check that out. Y'all know how much I love CJLA. I am always wearing their clothes. And so it was so obvious to me that I was like, yes, I want them to be the title sponsor. I want them to be a huge part of this event. I love Carly and her family. They're the real deal. They are Christians who are unashamed of their faith and their pro-life values. And they also make amazing clothes. I love all of the jeans from Carly Jean Los Angeles. I love all of their clothing items that I wear in all seasons of the year. Their denim is my absolute favorite. They are still doing this buy one, get one free deal right now for first time CJLA denim purchasers. So if you've never gotten jeans from Carly Jean Los Angeles, go to carlyjeanlosangeles.com, use code Allie's free jeans. It's buy one, get one free. How amazing is that? carlyjeanlosangeles.com, code Allie's free jeans. I wanted to start by mentioning Hersh Goldberg-Polin. He is the American Israeli who was a hostage held by Hamas. You can see his picture right there if you're watching on YouTube. And it has just been reported that he was brutally murdered by Hamas. So I'll give you a little bit of a summary as provided by CNN and the New York Post. Israel's military said it has discovered the bodies of 6 hostages killed by Hamas militants in Gaza, including an Israeli-American captive. They were murdered as Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, closed in for a rescue attempt in the tunnels deep below Gaza. That in and of itself just shows a level of cruelty that is incomprehensible. Israel launched its war against Hamas in Gaza after the terrorist group attacked Israel on October 7th. I know most of you know those details, but all of us kind of have our own little silos and we have our own lives. And thank the Lord, we have so much peace here. So it's easy to forget how significant this was and how absolutely traumatizing this has been, both for Jews here in the United States who have felt the reverberating effects of anti-Semitism on college campuses and in several different subsets of American culture, but also, of course, for Israelis themselves. I mean, it's even hard to believe that that really happened, that Hamas terrorists actually paraglided into a music festival and raped and maimed and tortured and murdered and kidnapped innocent people, and that you actually had people here, still have people here in the United States who say that Israel's defense of its own people, of its own country, its efforts to rescue the hostages, its retaliation against the terroristic regime of Hamas is somehow uncalled for or disproportionate. I mean, just people's sense of morality is completely warped. And that's not to say that I want to defend or justify every choice that has ever been made by Israel or the IDF. I don't really know anyone who has done that. That's certainly not what I'm saying. And I don't want to minimize the loss of life in Palestine either. Of course, there are Palestinian Christians who have been so deeply affected by this. There have been children, there have been babies who have had to bear the brunt of violence. But the fault of that, or the responsibility for all of those things, really rests on Hamas. It's not like Israel started attacking Palestine out of nowhere. If Hamas didn't want its people to have to endure this violence, deal with this violence, then they shouldn't have attacked innocent Israelis at a music festival. They should have made a better decision. But of course, Hamas doesn't care about its own people. It's never cared about its own people. That's why they hide themselves in hospitals and under schools. They don't care about the innocent children that, of course, are the primary victims of this kind of war. So a little bit more about this Israeli-American Hersh Goldberg-Polin. He was taken at gunpoint at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. He lost part of his left arm to a grenade and the attack. And then he was, of course, kidnapped and held hostage. The parents of this 23-year-old have been among the most vocal of the hostage families, pushing Netanyahu to seek a hostage release deal with Hamas. Of course, Netanyahu and the United States have reportedly been working on different kinds of deals in order to guarantee their release. This is very disconcerting. I think as an American, we have this idea that if you are an American and you are held hostage by any nation, by any regime, that your government is going to move heaven and earth to come rescue you, because that is who America is. And yet we have these American hostages that are languishing, and a hostage like this, who of course will never see his family, will never taste freedom again. His parents also gave an address at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. They were met with, at least ostensibly, a lot of support there. The hostages who were found murdered have been identified not only as Goldberg-Polin, but also, I don't know how to pronounce all of their names, Eden Yerushalmi, Ori Danino, Alex Lebanov, Carmel Gott, and Almog Sarusi. In a taped message Sunday, Netanyahu said that he had been shocked by this. He said 3 months ago on May 27th, Israel agreed to a hostage release deal with the full backing of the U.S. Hamas refused. And so he's asking, like, are we supposed to keep negotiating with these people? He says, are we supposed to show seriousness? And then President Biden, he had his own statement where he honored Hersh, and he said, I've worked tirelessly to bring their beloved Hersh safely to them, and I'm heartbroken by the news of his death. We will keep working around the clock for a deal to secure the release of the remaining hostages. And then he also, in a statement, criticized Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said that he's basically not doing enough. CNN asked on Monday whether Biden thought that Netanyahu was sufficiently working to reach an agreement, and Biden said simply no. Vice President Harris said that that POTUS and I met with the U.S. hostage deal negotiation team, and then the murder of Hersh Goldberg-Polin and 5 other hostages was brutal, barbaric act. And then she says something very contradictory, I think. She said Hamas leaders will pay for these crimes. And then she says it is long past time for a ceasefire and hostage deal. And, someone pointed out that this is completely hypocritical. Jesse Arm, Director of External Affairs and Presidential Initiatives at the Manhattan Institute, says that her statement is lunatic and incoherent. How can Hamas leaders pay for these crimes if it is long past time for a ceasefire? Palestinian leadership butchered 6 hostages, including an American citizen, because rescuers were approaching. We need a lethal response, not a white flag. Tim Walz, for his part, he responded like this at the Minnesota State Fair. Shot 1.
Most of my time is day out and then back in.
Governor, how are you feeling?
What's your reaction to the 6 hostages being found dead in Gaza?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
I mean, he obviously heard this reporter, because he looks straight at her and it gets quiet. She asks her question and then he looks away and he walks away. Now, this is because there is a large Muslim population in Minnesota, and I think he's honestly scared of them in a lot of ways. And the sad truth is, we like to separate the Muslim population in the United States from what's happening in Palestine and those who support Hamas. But it seems, at least from what we've seen, by and large, I'm not saying all, but by and large, the Muslim population here in the United States and in Europe does support what Hamas did on October 7th, and generally believes that Israel is not a rightful state, doesn't really have a right to be there. Again, I'm not saying 100% of Muslims here in the United States, but obviously there are enough of them, especially the Somali Muslim population. There are enough of them to make politicians on the far left, like Tim Walz, scared to say anything as basic as, yeah, we need to rescue the hostages. I am devastated by this, and my thoughts and prayers go to his family. I mean, he could have said anything. He looked this reporter in the eye and could not muster up an ounce of compassion or dignity for this 23-year-old American that was murdered by a terrorist regime. Just sit for a fact and think about how significant that is. Trey Yingst, he's from Fox News, and he is chief foreign correspondent, and he has been reporting on this war since October 7th. He says Hamas is ratcheting up the pressure on Israel's psychological warfare at a level not seen since the start of the war. Bill Ackman, there's 84,000 likes on this post. He goes through why he thinks President Biden and Kamala Harris are really to blame. He points this out, which I think is significant. He says, consider what pressure, if any, the U.S. has brought to bear on Hamas and our friends in the region who harbor Hamas's leadership. Why has our leadership adopted this failed strategy? Because POTUS, Biden, who has been on vacation for 16 days, that's true, and Kamala Harris, who also just skipped a ceremony at Arlington Cemetery to honor 13 fallen soldiers, believe they will lose important votes in certain key swing states from Hamas supporters on campuses. And that is what it is. Now, I also think that Kamala Harris she is at least rhetorically, and Biden too, rhetorically, they are supporting Israel in most ways, except then they'll also say, oh, there needs to be a ceasefire there, as if both sides are equally to blame. And so they're trying to be as politically strategic as possible. But that just tells you what a gross place we've gotten in America, that there are people in the United States that they have to cater to that think, oh, yeah, you know what? like paragliding into a music festival and raping and murdering a bunch of young women was a justified response to Israel just existing in the region. Like that those are votes that you actually have to care about in the United States if you are a Democrat, not if you're a Republican. That's a really, really troublesome and disturbing reality that we live in. The Babylon Bee, I think, summed it up nicely. They say, touching, Biden builds sandcastle to honor murdered American hostage. Because, of course, he is chilling at the beach, the only place I think cognitively he is actually equipped to be. There's more on this general subject as Trump paid tribute to service members killed in Afghanistan while Biden continued to play in the sand at the beach, and Kamala Harris was nowhere to be found. And the reaction to all of this was, I thought that it was stunning. So I'll get to that in just a second. Let me pause and tell you about We Heart Nutrition. Y'all, I absolutely love We Heart Nutrition and all their supplements. I take their postnatal vitamin, their omega-3s. I take their magnesium, their iron supplement. I have always had low iron for as long as I can remember. Every time I get blood work back, I've got a doctor telling me you're low in iron. And I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I eat red meat. I take my iron supplement. I've taken all different kinds of iron supplements. This time, I just got blood work done by a functional medicine doctor, and she said, wow, your iron levels are perfect. They're optimal. First time in my life I've ever heard that. The only thing I can think that's changed is that I started taking my iron supplement and all the rest of my vitamins from We Heart Nutrition at the beginning of the year. It's been a total game changer for my health, and I'm just so thankful for them. Unapologetically Christian and pro-life. You can go to weheartnutrition.com. Take a 20-second quiz. They'll personalize your supplement regimen just for you. This is a great company to work with, and you will not be sorry that you made the switch to them. Go to weheartnutrition.com. Use code Allie. You'll get 20% off your order. weheartnutrition.com, code Allie. So this weekend, President Donald Trump honored the 13 service members who died in the botched Afghanistan withdrawal 3 years ago Monday. So last Monday, it was August 26th. He joined the families of 3 of the fallen for a private event at Arlington National Cemetery. And as I said, President Biden stayed away from the White House for the second week in a row, vacationing. And Kamala Harris was apparently just at home and decided not to join, even though both of them were reportedly invited just as President Trump was. President Trump was, as I just said, invited by the families. Remember that. That's an important fact as we break this all down. The media criticized him for taking campaign photos there, for using it to gain popularity with voters. But that is not what happened. These families called President Trump, just as they called Kamala Harris and President Biden, and said, please come help us honor our loved ones who fell in Afghanistan. And only Donald Trump showed up. So Trump laid wreaths in honor of Marine Sergeant Nicole G. and Staff Sergeant Darren Hoover, as well as Army Staff Sergeant Ryan Naus. This is another one of those events that happened and people talked about it for a while and then we all kind of moved on. Like, do we remember how absolutely disastrous that was and how unnecessary the loss of life was? And like when we look at Afghanistan now, the law that just passed for women there, they cannot show any part of their body, that their voice cannot be heard in public. And we are actually funding, since this disastrous Afghanistan pullout, we are actually funding through our tax dollars the Taliban that is now just brutally oppressing women. And do we hear, by the way, talks of the Handmaid's Tale going on over there? No, like we're supposed to believe that Donald Trump is going to be the one to bring in the Handmaid's Tale. I mean, I saw a tweet saying this, like Donald Trump is the guy that literally hosted like bikini contests like 20 years ago. We think he's going to be the one to force women to wear hijabs here in the United States. He's going to be the one ushering in the Handmaid's Tale, those people who say that they're so worried about Project 2025 and what it's going to do to women's rights, they have nothing to say about our tax dollars funding the Taliban that is actually oppressing, subjugating, and dehumanizing women in very tangible ways. So Trump was there honoring these fallen heroes. 3 years after losing their loved ones, many of the Gold Star families are still calling for accountability for the attack, enraged that no military or other government officials lost their jobs over the disastrous withdrawal. Of course, that's not how our cakistocracy works. That's not how our bureaucracy works. You get to fail upward as long as you toe the line on progressive ideology. Just ask Anthony Fauci. Many also criticized Biden for his lack of concern and even acknowledgement of those killed, particularly during the dignified transfer of the bodies. Following Trump's appearance at the Arlington ceremony, Kamala Harris slammed Trump for allegedly politicizing the troops and claimed he disrespected sacred ground. Now, I just want you to notice what's happening. She is criticizing Donald Trump for politicizing the ceremony when Donald Trump himself did not bring up politics there. Like, he didn't say anything about the campaign. He didn't say anything about Biden. He was just there, receiving the invitation, accepting the invitation, honoring these fallen heroes. And it's Kamala Harris here who actually uses it as a way to punch him in her campaign, through her campaign. She said this on August 31st. She said, as the vice president, I've had the privilege of visiting Arlington National Cemetery several times. It's a solemn place, a place where we can come together and honor American heroes. My question is, okay, where were you? And then she goes through all of these things that Donald Trump has supposedly done and said over the years that has been disrespectful. She says, this is a man who is unable to comprehend anything other than service to himself. If there is one thing on which we as Americans can all agree, it is that our veterans, military families, and service members should be honored, never disparaged, and treated with nothing less than our highest respect and gratitude, which is exactly what he did. Laughable, by the way, for her to say that he is someone who only serves himself. That is what Kamala Harris has literally done her entire career. I mean, I know we've talked about Willie Brown, and I'm not even coming at it from like the promiscuity, immorality angle, because we know Donald Trump has his own stuff. But as a 29-year-old, she literally used Willie Brown, who is a married man with 3 children, gave him sexual favors in exchange for political power. That is a woman who is only in service to herself. And that's what her entire career has been. She is now married to a man who had an affair with his children's nanny while he was married and got her pregnant. So that's who Doug Emhoff and Kamala Harris are. They are people who are only in service to themselves. Now, you could say your criticisms about Donald Trump, but she certainly has no moral high ground. She has no place to criticize Donald Trump for being self-serving in any way. She's just jealous that she decided to make this misstep, that she was not there to honor these fallen soldiers, even though she had the choice to be. So she posted this on X. And then, of course, Donald Trump hit back. And I thought that his strategy for hitting back at Kamala Harris was absolutely perfect. It was disciplined. He didn't use his own words. Instead, he used the words of the Gold Star families. He used the words of the family members whose loved ones fell unnecessarily on that day, who had something to say to Kamala Harris after her completely unjustified criticism. So one after the other, he quote tweeted or quote posted, I don't know how you say it in X language now, her critical tweet with a video of one family member whose loved one had died. And after all of this, the Trump campaign, the Trump team put their videos into one compilation. And here's what that sounds like. Sought to.
My daughter-in-law, Sergeant Nicole Leanne G., was killed in the Afghanistan exit at Abbey Gate.
Our kids were murdered because of your administration.
You were not at Dover for the dignified transfer. And no time have you reached out to me to offer your condolences, to offer thank you for Kareem's sacrifice and service.
You have 13 families who have been waiting over 3 years to so much as get a phone call, to so much as hear our kids' names said aloud.
You failed for 3 years and 8 months to acknowledge our kids.
Where were you and Joe Biden on August 26, 2024? Nowhere near Arlington Cemetery.
Really, really powerful. And there's more. You could go to Donald Trump's X page. Remember, he's posting back on X now, formerly Twitter, and you can watch all of their videos. They're really powerful. They also released a letter of support for Trump's presence at Arlington National Cemetery. They said he was there to honor their sacrifice, yet Vice President Harris has disgracefully twisted this sacred moment into a political ploy. Despite our request for a meeting to discuss the loss of our loved ones, Vice President Harris has repeatedly ignored us, showing a complete lack of empathy and accountability. Her actions, both in the failure of the Afghanistan withdrawal and in her disgraceful politicization of this anniversary, have shown that she lacks the judgment, compassion, and leadership required for Commander-in-Chief. Wow. Wow. That is very, very powerful and good for Trump for allowing them to use their words because they speak volumes. Now, obviously, you've got the left-wing media running cover for Kamala Harris. They're trying to give her an excuse, saying what happened didn't really happen, and no, it was still President Trump who was acting inappropriately here. So I'll get into that in just a second. Let me tell you about our third sponsor, and that is Preborn. If you are looking for a way to get involved in the pro-life movement that can help real women and children, you can know exactly where your money is going, then donate to Preborn. Preborn is a network of clinics that provides free resources to pregnant women in need across the country. And one of the first things that they do, if a pregnant woman comes in and she's trying to find more information about adoption or parenting, or she just wants to confirm if she's pregnant, if she's far enough along, they will provide her with an ultrasound. And when a pregnant woman sees her little baby on that sonogram screen, she hears the beating heart, she sees their fully formed little body, as small as it might be, and she realizes, oh my gosh, this is not just a clump of cells. Like, this is a human being that is depending on me for a life. She is so much more likely to choose life for her baby. And so do what you can to partner with Preborn to help them provide these free sonograms that save so many lives. If you go to preborn.com/Allie, I recommend donating $28 because that covers the cost of an ultrasound, but donate whatever you can, whether it's $5 or maybe it's $5,000. You can save lives either way. Go to preborn.com/Allie. On Sunday, Senator Tom Cotton, he is a Republican senator from Arkansas. He appeared on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, and she questioned him about Trump's appearance at Arlington. Welker claimed that both Harris and Biden had previously met with the Gold Star families during the dignified transfer of their bodies in 2021, but that was actually not true. And NBC had to post after that appearance, after that false statement, this. They said, on our broadcast this morning, we incorrectly implied that both President Biden and Vice President Harris attended the dignified transfer of the 13 American service members killed during the Afghanistan withdrawal. Biden was in attendance, but Harris was not. Stunning. Absolutely stunning that she wasn't there. Wow. Here is how Senator Cotton responded to this. SOT 3.
Senator, is it ever appropriate to make campaign content at military grave sites?
He didn't take campaign photos there. These families, Gold Star families, whose children died because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's incompetence, invited him to the cemetery, and they asked him to take those photos. You know who the families also invited? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Where were they? Joe Biden was sitting at a beach. Kamala Harris was sitting at her mansion in Washington, D.C. She was 4 miles away. 10 minutes. She could have gone to the cemetery and honored the sacrifice of those young men and women. But she hasn't. She never has spoken to them or taken a meeting with them.
Well, they did meet with them during the dignified transfer.
Because of
they
her.
were with them at
There she is, trying to repeat that lie. Oh, man. Think about that. Think about what kind of person you have to be, what kind of politician that you have to be, how much compassion you have to lack. There's so much talk about her being this joyful, empathetic, compassionate person and Trump being so mean and hateful. You'll remember that when we covered the evangelicals for Harris, Latasha Morrison said that she was looking at the two platforms and she saw that Harris and her policies demonstrated meekness and compassion, the fruit of the Spirit. I actually think that she said the Beatitudes, and that, of course, Trump and his policies are devoid of any mercy. And, of course, actually the exact opposite is true. Now, I'm not saying that Trump is always this lovey-dovey guy, but how many stories do we hear? It seems like there's a new story every few months of someone from Trump's past saying, yeah, I was a nobody and Trump paid attention to me. He helped pay my bills. He was kind to me when no one else would show me kindness, when I was helping build Trump Tower or whatever it was. Some employee in one of his huge organizations has a story about a conversation that he had with Trump when Trump showed him generosity and kindness. There was one of you who reached out to me. I might have already told this story. You have a family member who owns a company in Ohio, and he had donated to Trump a couple times, not, a billionaire, but had just supported Trump's campaign. And he had had a couple interactions with Trump. And when Trump got word that this man's wife had died from cancer, Trump called this man to offer his condolences and to have a thorough conversation with him about this. I have heard so many stories of Trump just like that. I know that he's not as disciplined as he should be with his words. I know that he's said things that are demeaning that certainly I don't agree with, but I actually do think that he is a compassionate, loving guy. And I think you see that reflected in the admiration of his children and his grandchildren. Now, contrast that to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, this person that we are told is the source of all joy and generosity. Have you ever heard a story about Kamala Harris from her past where she has some friend or a former roommate or a former colleague or a former employee come out and say, let me tell you about the real Kamala Harris. She is sweet. She is kind. Let me tell you about the charity that she showed me. Let me tell you about the time that she showed me generosity when she didn't have to, when she demonstrated grace when she could have been cruel. I have never heard that story. I've only heard the opposite. I've only heard the stories of vengefulness. I have only heard the stories about how she is terrible to work with as vice president, as district attorney of San Francisco, as attorney general of California. You only hear those stories and even those rumors of just how she is so hard to deal with and hard to work with as a person. If there were stories of her compassion and grace somewhere from her past, we would have heard them. They would be heralded from the rooftops by the media, who are looking for every opportunity to say that she is this compassionate, kind person. I'm telling you, as I've said for weeks and weeks now, she is mean. And I'm not just talking about her policies, although that matters most to me because that's what's going to affect our lives and affect the trajectory of the country most. Of course, those are mean. I mean, she's bloodthirsty. She voted against the Born Alive Infant Survivors Protection Act that just guaranteed the right of babies born after abortion, surviving abortions, to health care. She voted no on that. So, of course, she's cruel policy-wise. She's very bloodthirsty. She always has been, forcing pregnancy centers in California through the FACT Act to advertise for abortion, overturned by the Supreme Court. She doesn't care one bit about your freedom or your First Amendment rights at all. That is obvious. You can ask David Delighted about that. So she's mean policy-wise, but I'm telling you, she is a mean person. And if there were evidence to the contrary, we would have heard it already. Instead, we just need this. We have this like media manufactured persona of who she is. And they're trying to tell us that Trump is actually the opposite of who he is. Again, I'm not saying that Trump exemplifies all the Beatitudes either. That's actually the difference between the right and the left, Democrats and Republicans. We don't feel the need to say that Donald Trump is Jesus or that he's even like Jesus. We don't feel the need to idolize him or to pretend that he's something that he's not. And yes, yet you hear this ridiculous language from the left that Kamala Harris isn't just the next best option or the lesser of two evils. Obviously, I would disagree with that, but I would understand where they're coming from. You literally hear from professing evangelicals that Kamala Harris is like Jesus. Oh my goodness. The Delulu the idolatry that goes into that. And they're the very same people that say that we on the right are vying for power, that we're hungry for the Handmaid's Tale, that we're the ones that want some like takeover of empire, yada, yada, yada. Dude, you are literally comparing this abortion fiend Kamala Harris to Jesus Christ, okay? It is time for you to assess your own heart, my friend. New York Times also running cover for Kamala Harris here. Here's the headline. This is a variation of Republicans pounce, that meme. Trump campaign uses statements from Gold Star families to attack Harris. It was the latest effort by the Trump campaign to defend itself after the campaign defied a ban on political campaigning at Arlington National Cemetery. I mean, that is some expert level propagandistic finagling of what actually happened. As you heard Senator Cotton say, like, he wasn't campaigning there. He received the invitation. He accepted the invitation. He did what the families wanted them to do. And then it was Kamala Harris who actually used that to campaign for herself. And you'll also remember that Biden actually did use a Memorial Day, a Memorial Day honoring of our veterans for his campaign video, for a campaign video in 2020. So on May 25th, 2020, when he was campaigning, Biden included a photo of himself and his wife at the graveside of a military member. This picture is from 2010, when then Vice President Biden took part in a wreath ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknowns and spoke to the Memorial Amphitheater at Arlington Cemetery. At the end, it says, Biden President, text Joe to 30330, paid for by Biden for President. So he actually did use a very solemn moment honoring the lives of the fallen to campaign for president in 2020. Now, maybe the New York Times had their panties in a wad about that too. Somehow, I doubt it. Okay, I want to quickly go through this Kamala Harris interview that she gave with Dana Bash on CNN. You've probably heard it covered a lot, so I really just want to highlight one bit of hypocrisy to show you again who Kamala Harris is. The interview was pre-recorded. It was shot around a table in a Savannah coffee shop in the swing state of Georgia. I can't believe we're even saying swing state of Georgia. That's just sad. That's so sad. And she was right next to Governor Tim Walz, of course, her running mate. It was a pre-recorded interview. It was 27 minutes. They aired 27 minutes. Now, they first said that it was cut down a lot. They first said that it was like a 2-hour conversation that they cut down to 27 minutes. Now they're saying that they aired the interview in its entirety. I don't believe that. I just don't believe that they aired the entire interview. Harris has received criticism for her lack of proposed policies and changing the policies she previously supported to appeal to voters in the middle. And to credit Dana Bash, she did ask her about this. So Kamala says, my values have not changed. Here's SUP 4.
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed.
Okay, so she said that she hasn't changed. She has not changed her values when it comes to the climate and when it comes to the border. Well, here she is in 2020 saying that she wants to ban fracking for the climate. SOP 5.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Okay, and here is SOP 6.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020.
So she's obviously gone back and forth there. Now, in this interview, she also says that there needs to be consequences for illegal aliens crossing the border. But here's what she said just a few years ago, SOP 7.
Favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
Okay, So her values haven't changed, but she wants to ban fracking. It's kind of a big deal in places like Pennsylvania, but she doesn't want to ban fracking. Her values haven't changed, but she wants to decriminalize illegal border crossings. But she also believes now apparently that there should be consequences for border crossings. Now, I think we can just look at her actions as vice president, as border czar, which she undoubtedly was, to see what she really believes, at least about immigration. She also helped work on the Green New Deal, as she said in the CNN interview. So we can look at her actions. Like, we know that she's a radical on both of these things. She is an open borders radical. Laken Riley's death is at least in part because of Kamala Harris and the actions that she has refused to take as someone who is in charge of the border. Did she even visit the border as border czar? I mean, that is one of the most pressing issues. Civilizationally existential, the issue of immigration. And she has absolutely failed, and it has led to the loss of lives. And she's saying, vote for me. You should definitely keep me in this job, definitely keep me in the White House, even though I've shown you that I don't even care about the sovereignty of our country. Well, she says now that she has a solution for our economic woes. Economics and immigration, those are the two big issues that most Americans care about. They direct our lives every day, or affect our lives every day, rather, and they certainly go hand in hand. Wait till you hear what she says she's going to do to make inflation definitely, totally go down a whole lot. Okay, let me tell you about our last sponsor for the day, and that is Jase Medical. Should something happen with the supply chain and for some reason you can't get the medication that you need on time, you need a year-long supply of the prescriptions that you and your family rely on. You also need a Jase case. That comes with the most common antibiotics for typical infections that you might have. Comes with an EpiPen add-on. You can add on something like ivermectin or Tamiflu. Just having these in your back pocket in case you need them can give you so much peace of mind. Go to jasemedical.com. Use code Allie at checkout for a discount. That's jasemedical.com, code Allie. All right, so Kamala Harris is saying that she is going to make your life more affordable. She is going to ease the burden of inflation by implementing this new, amazing, never tried before concept of price controls. That's right. She says that she is going to first provide free cash to those buying a home for the first time. Of course, there's no such thing as free cash. That's just more spending that is going to exacerbate inflation even more, as well as for lower and middle income families having children, in addition to her controversial plan to fix prices on groceries. So this was during her campaign speech in North Carolina. Harris promised to pass the first ever federal ban on price gouging. And again, that sounds good. These corporations that are raising prices more than they need to, more than they are required to make up for inflation on their ends. Like, yeah, we feel like we want those companies to be punished for that. And so someone who comes out and says, I'm going to make sure that they can no longer price gouge and they can't make things too expensive for you, it can sound really good. But the problem is that doesn't work. It's been tried many, many times before in many socialist countries, even right here in the United States in the inflationary stage of the 1970s, and it has never worked. USA Today is even saying as much. Trump has been calling her Comrade Kamala because this is a communistic proposal, and he's kind of playing on that. So USA Today says Trump's Comrade Kamala insult is a bit much, but price controls really are an awful idea. It says price controls have been tried in various forms around the world for centuries. They always fail. Harris is trying to deflect from the pain of high inflation during the Biden-Harris administration. She's also trying to deflect any blame for the administration's role in it. They do acknowledge that a lot of inflation has to do with COVID, maybe things beyond Harris-Biden's control, but of course the unmitigated spending that has been allowed, enabled, exacerbated by the Biden-Harris campaign. of course, has contributed significantly to inflation. It's part of the reason why your groceries are up like 40 to 70%. Biden has also floated a price capping plan of his own, which Harris supports. Last month, he announced a proposal to limit rent increases by landlords. But rent control, again, has been tried time and time again, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It ends up being more expensive for everyone. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at what exactly this has concluded in, what exactly this has led to over the years. There's one example from the Nixon era. This is according to Heritage. President Nixon in 1971 ordered an initial 90-day freeze on prices in labor, with future price increases to be subject to federal approval. Again, they were enduring a lot of inflation during that time. This was a very popular proposal. Again, it sounds really good. You're going to make my life more affordable. The proposal proved wildly popular, according to Heritage, with 75% public support and a landslide re-election the following year. President Nixon even ordered an IRS audit on companies breaching the ceiling. Ultimately, the program ended in disaster. Ranchers stopped shipping their cattle to the market, farmers drowned their chickens, and consumers emptied the shelves of supermarkets. In April 1974, the administration dismantled most of the program. Importantly, the inflation of the early 1970s resulted largely from easy money, just as the inflationary surge of the post-COVID era is largely a direct result of the explosion of government spending beginning in 2020. So those things actually have to change for inflation to go down. Just capping the price of something doesn't actually work long term. It creates chaos and it makes things a lot more expensive in the long run. And of course, we know, going back to immigration, that illegal immigration is also, it's not just a national security issue. It's not just a culture issue. It's not just a public safety issue. It's not just a foreign policy issue, a sovereignty issue. It's so many different issues. But it's also an economic issue. Like when supply for something like housing remains the same, but the demand goes up, then of course the price of what is being demanded is going to surge. And that's part of what's happening right now. That's not the only reason why it's so expensive to buy a house, but certainly when you have a state like California saying, okay, we're basically going to pay the down payment for an illegal alien, a benefit that we are not giving to our citizens, that's going to negatively affect the housing market. And that's going to make it even harder for responsible citizens, for families who have been saving a long time, to be able to afford a home. And so if she really cares about inflation, if she really cares about people being able to buy a home the way that she says that she does, and she says, oh, we're just going to spend more money, we're just going to give anyone who wants to buy a home tens of thousands of dollars, of course, again, exacerbating inflation, making the rest of our lives so much more expensive. If she really cared about that, then she would say, okay, we're closing the border. We're going to implement mass deportations of all illegal aliens, starting, of course, with any who have committed additional crimes. The most violent can be prioritized, and then you can go from there. That would have a hugely positive effect on our economy as well as everything else. And yet, of course, she has overseen a dereliction of duty by our federal government to secure our border. That's who Kamala Harris is. I'm telling you, her presidency would be a disaster. I've talked about my disagreements with Donald Trump, but he can be pushed toward the good. He can be pushed toward life. We already like his economic policies, his foreign policy, his law enforcement policy. And so I feel good about that. On the things that I don't feel as good about, like abortion, he has a much better potential to be influenced, as we've seen with the whole Amendment 4 thing in Florida that I talked about on Instagram, than Kamala Harris, who is funded by the abortion lobby and who is as bloodthirsty as it gets when it comes to abortion. And so if you can't find it in you to like enthusiastically vote for Donald Trump, enthusiastically vote against Kamala Harris, and try to get the other people in your life to see why doing so matters so much. All right, that's all we've got time for today. We will be back here tomorrow.